Good morning. So we thought today we'd sit down and have a little chat about our very long and bumpy road to what you see as van life today. It obviously hasn't been smooth sailing, and we do just want to put it out there a little bit of the risks and realities behind actually doing van life. It's not to put you off because we still love it despite all the setbacks, but yeah, just a bit of a reality check. We when this was all happening, we did feel quite isolated and embarrassed, and we didn't want to talk to our friends and family about it because we felt like we were just failing, you know, like at van life. But honestly, meeting so many awesome people on the road and commiserating with others, particularly transit owners, over a beer and the fire has just helped to make us feel not so alone and to honestly see some of the funny side and understand the lessons that we've learned along the way. So let's get into it.
Last year we lived at the sunny coast, and while we were there we had a little Subaru Forester that we took everywhere, on roads, off roads, you name it. In the back we had a whole DIY bed set up where I could lie out. We had drawers underneath for all of our clothes, a little kitchen set up, but there was no means of working. The headspace was about this big. So in comes van life to try and solve that problem.
So in January 2020, we started seriously looking at vans. We'd had a look around and honestly, nothing was anything like the pictures. This was our last shot. We decided if this van was no good, we were just gonna travel around Australia in the Subaru and make it work. You know, stay in some hotels, hide from the rain when we needed to, and obviously have to pay a lot more for cafes so we had somewhere to be able to work. But we drove 4 hours south, and this van was everything we wanted it to be. We were so excited, and we bought it on the spot and drove it back to my parents' house.
So the time had come and our lease was up. We sold almost everything that we owned. We moved out of the flat at the sunny coast, and we were fully ready to move into the van. We just had some renovations to do. So we moved back in with Shelley's parents for a bit and spent a month doing all the DIY to make the van look as you see it today.
So luckily for us, my dad's a carpenter and, to be honest, a jack of all trades. So he made a base at my parents' house and used all of the tools in his shed. Honestly, the van renovations were a lot harder and a lot more grueling than we first anticipated. Everything took double the time we expected it to. Making things fit in a tiny, tiny space is actually quite a challenge, but we got there in the end and we're really proud of the renovations we actually did. We packed up the van and we were ready to go.
So we drove about 45 minutes into Brisbane to show off the van to our friends and say goodbye. But as we were driving, the van overheated and the whole head gasket blew. Turns out getting transit parts in Australia is actually pretty difficult compared to the UK. So we were kind of left in a sort of limbo. What do we do now?
We were very unsure about what to do. We'd put literal blood, sweat and tears into this van. We'd spent so much money already, and if we didn't go ahead with fixing the engine, obviously the entire van was just going to go to the wreckers. So at the end of the day, we actually decided to go with the conversion, and we now have a Holden Commodore V6 engine in our Ford Transit van. Either way you look at it, it's got some go, and it does sound pretty cool. But it wasn't an easy road to get this done. We ordered a conversion kit, and that was just the beginning of the delays. That took an extra 3 weeks to get delivered. There was a lot of back and forth between us and the garage, and we just didn't know what to do. We didn't know how long this was going to take. We didn't know if it was actually going to be feasible. And Ben had a visa. We had an actual time limit to travel Australia. We didn't know when it was going to end. We didn't really know what to do. We were so lost.
By this point we're getting pretty fed up with the van, and we just needed to take some time, clear our heads a bit. So we packed up the trusty Subaru and drove a couple of hours down the road to Stanthorpe. Little did we know, that 2-hour drive down the road actually turned into 2 months as we drove all the way down the east coast for some epic adventures, ended up on the Great Ocean Road.
So those 2 months weren't as easy as they may have seemed. we were so torn between actually driving far. As you know, Australia's quite a big place, and we didn't want to repeat too much. We didn't want to get too far south, come back up north, and then repeat the exact same road in the van. But we just kept getting bad news and bad news from the garage. It was taking longer and longer. There was more and more problems with the conversion. We ended up down at Easter for Melbourne at a friend's, and it was actually fabulous. We went to the Great Ocean Road, we had a great time, we surfed, we just did so many fun things, and I'm so proud that we just made the most of it. We started van life without the van, and we really did try our best. There were days where it was really hard, there was days when it was raining, there was days when we just wished we had the van, but then we reminded ourselves that we were still traveling, we were still doing everything we wanted to do, and we were so grateful to actually have the Subaru for those 2 months.
So we finally made the hard decision to come back to Brisbane in the hopes that our van would be ready. But when we got back, it still wasn't finished yet. Frustrated and needing some time and space and to clear our heads, we borrowed our friend's hiking gear and headed up to the Sunshine Coast, where we did a 5-day overnight hike, carrying all of our food and tents on our backs.
Before we knew it, 4 months had passed and we finally got the get-go that the van was ready to pick up. So the next month we knew, because it was an engine conversion, we had to do some mini trips around closer to home to test that everything was working. We didn't anticipate so many breakdowns though. Some examples of why we broke down: there was no brake fluid in it, a transmission line blew, the spark plugs had a fault in them, but it's not a brand new engine that we put in. So all of this was expected. There was other few things along the way, but another long month of breakdowns, figuring out how RACQ works, and a lot of frustrating calls between us and the garage. But one day we decided, screw it, we've got to learn to fix these things on the road. So one random Friday we packed up and we just left.
So we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. The main one really being that you can't stick to too much of a plan, because
Can't stick to any of a plan.
can't stick to any of a plan because stuff will go wrong, or you may just find yourself loving somewhere and you want to keep going for longer.
And honestly, that is the best part of van life, is that if you love a place, you can stay longer. If you don't like it, you can just leave. You always have your home with you.
Yeah.
But obviously breakdowns make that a little bit tricky. But definitely, if you're thinking about a van, always get top tier roadside assistance. That has come in handy way too many times.
Yeah, far too much. We've basically got them on speed dial.
And just know how to fix basic things yourself. We know how to check the odd few things in the engine, and we can fix a fair bit in the back of the van as well.
Yeah, we can.
And honestly, rolling with the punches is still something we are trying to learn. We're definitely better at it than we used to be, and it's a very good lesson to learn, and it just makes things, puts everything into perspective a little bit. We're trying to, yeah.
It's not the end of the world when something goes wrong, even though it may feel like it at the time.
But we are so happy that we are actually enjoying van life and that it worked out for us in the end, albeit a very long, bumpy and expensive road to get here.
Yeah, exactly. It's all been worth it, I think.
But follow along and see if we can get where.
Yeah, see where we get to.
God. To sum it up, I am so proud of us for jumping into van life, even if it meant starting without the van. Our time on the East Coast would not have been possible without the help of our friends and family. So a huge thank you to everyone who gave us a couch to sleep on, a shoulder to cry on when things kept going wrong, and a reason to keep celebrating.
Moving with your auntie and uncle to Bel Air.
We even got to go to my cousin's wedding in New South Wales. We are so thankful for our time on the East Coast, and we really do appreciate the van that little bit more after having gone through all of this. It may have been a long and rough road, but now we are so happy that we actually get to reap the benefits of van life and all the hard work we put into it.